And so thank you all for your cooperation. We're just trying to get this information as accessible as possible. So today we are going to be talking about the Klamath Basin study and where we're at so far and where we're wanting to go. And primarily, how can we get the community, the organizations, the agencies involved, and kind of a timeline on all of that. And then we will open it up to general questions and comments, and then hopefully just have an open discussion about input, feedback, ideas. And so the meeting purpose for these 4 community meetings is to primarily share information about the Klamath Basin study and where we are right now and where we plan to go, and also to learn what is important to you. You know, this is your study. We want to address the wicked problems in the Klamath Basin watershed, and we want to make sure that the things that we look into are also important to the folks that live here, that work here, that play here. And so we also want to understand any current or future planned activities, restoration activities, projects, if anything is funded, if anything is, going to be coming down the pipeline in the next couple of years, just so we don't duplicate efforts, because we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to step on toes. We want to make sure that we're working in collaboration with the other entities that have been working in this basin for decades and will still continue to work in this basin. And also, we want to encourage new participation and encourage collaboration. We can't do this study without the folks in this room, the folks online, the other agencies and organizations and landowners that live here. And so just a little bit of information about the Army Corps of Engineers. So we are a federal agency. We sit under the Department of Defense. We have about 40 offices across the nation. We have offices internationally, but the San Francisco district is partnering with the Yurok tribe. They are our non-federal sponsor. And so the San Francisco district, our office is in downtown San Francisco, and our area of responsibility extends all the way up north the Klamath Basin, down south to the Salinas River. So we hug the shoreline up the coast of California. And we have a few mission areas. So we plan, design, and construct water resource projects. And so that's why we're here today. But additionally, you may know us for our regulatory mission, where we permit construction along waterways and for wetlands, the Clean Water Act. We also operate and maintain water supply and recreational facilities. We have a few dams and recreation sites a little bit south of here, like Mendocino, Lake Sonoma. So those are some examples of some of the rec areas that we have. And then we also support state emergency management and response activities. So we have a lot of colleagues right now down in LA helping out with the recovery efforts from the wildfire. We have colleagues in the East Coast helping out with Hurricane Helene. So we do a lot of stuff across the country and internationally. But a really important aspect to know about the Army Corps is that everything that we do is congressionally authorized and appropriated. So what that means, we need to get permission from Congress to study, to do anything, and we have to get money from them to look into anything that they authorize us to do. So the Army Corps is not grant funded. We have to get money from Congress to do anything. And so I will pass it off to Corey to talk about ecosystem restoration.
Thanks, Lexi. Hello, my name is Corey. I'm the lead planner for this feasibility study. You might hear us call it a feasibility study, a general investigation, or just an ecosystem restoration study. We kind of mean the same thing by all terms. But I want to give you a high-level overview of what is an aquatic ecosystem restoration study. It's not the typical type of study where you're going out and collecting data and sampling water quality and drilling some bore holes. It's more of a review of the existing problems in a watershed, specifically problems associated with river channels, riparian, floodplain, and wetland areas. The study is also a decision-making framework intended to have touch points for public feedback and public input. And it's also intended to be a rational, transparent decision-making framework for selecting a restoration plan to ultimately recommend to Congress for funding and permission to construct. And a feasibility study is always initiated at the request of a local sponsor. And as Lexi mentioned, our sponsor is the Yurok tribe. So this is a very high level overview of what a feasibility study is. And we are at the very, very beginning. We're in the first blue box on the far right. We are trying right now to understand the current conditions in the watershed. What are the problems associated with the rivers and the creeks in the watershed? What are our opportunities for restoration? And that's what we're here today for. We're here to hear from you. And so you can tell us what's going on in the watershed. What are the problems that you think need to be addressed? And with that information, we'll develop some potential solutions to address those problems. And maybe you already have an idea of some potential solutions yourself, and you can share that with us as well. And we'll take that information and we'll compile a list of potential solutions, and we'll develop an initial array of alternatives. The next step is to evaluate those alternatives. And we can evaluate them on a range of different criteria, but primarily we're going to be focusing on environmental criteria because this is an ecosystem restoration study. One of our primary criteria is the amount of habitat that we create. But we're also interested in other kinds of ecosystem goods and services that might also occur with a restoration project. And we can also evaluate alternatives based on benefits to the community, benefits to the economy. Maybe there are some recreation components, some tourism benefits. And we'll also definitely be considering community input and community preference when we select a plan. So after we go through this evaluation step, hopefully there will be one plan, which can be a project, a single project, or a series of projects. Hopefully there'll be one plan that rises to the top and we say, this is the one that has the best bang for the buck, has the most benefits for the environment and for the community. And this is the plan we're going to select, and we're going to write a report on that, send it off to our chief of engineers in DC, have him sign it, and he submits it to Congress for a request for funding. And so that is the final product at the end of our study, a recommendation to Congress for funding for a project. And so Congress has to act for anything further to happen. And the feasibility study, where we are right now, is just the very first step in developing a project, a water resources project that would get approved by Congress to enter the pre-construction, engineering, and design phase, and then approved by Congress, once again, for construction, monitoring and adaptive management, and long-term operation and maintenance. So the 3-year feasibility study is really the first step in a process that can be 8 years or a decade, depending on how fast we can move. So this is the study area for our feasibility study. This is the geographic boundary of where we're focusing our attention. We're focusing on 3 sub-basins in the Klamath Basin. We're focusing on the Scott River, the Shasta River, and the upper mid-Klamath sub-basins. And you'll notice that there's a hard line on the boundary between Oregon and California. Our congressional authority does not allow us to look at restoration projects in Oregon at this time. And as Lexi mentioned, one of the main reasons we're here today is because we're trying to understand the current conditions of the watershed and the future conditions. The study team, the Army Corps study team, has been doing their homework. We've been reading a lot of reports. I'm trying to understand the history of development in the watershed so that we can understand the problems, the source of the problems, what caused them, and the potential solutions as well. We also want to make sure that we're avoiding duplication of efforts. If you have a restoration project in the pipeline, we don't want to also plan a restoration project for that same stretch of river. But we're also interested in leveraging the existing and future restoration efforts. So maybe you have a restoration project in the pipeline that we can build upon, that we can have a synergy with. Or maybe you have a restoration project that needs federal or needs funding, and you could submit it to us for consideration for federal funding. So when we get to the question portion of our meeting here today, we'll want to hear about what types of plans and projects you guys are working on in the watershed. And the Army Corps can participate in a lot of different types of restoration projects. I just listed a few here to kind of get the juices flowing. But we're interested in creating natural channel conditions and pools and riffles and structure within the river system. We're interested in restoring floodplain function by reconnecting the floodplain to its channel. We can also look at modifications of obstructions to fish passage. We can consider bypasses, fish ladders, whatever might be appropriate. We can remove levees or just setback levees to provide more room for the river to meander. We're open to a wide range of restoration options, but we want to know what's important to you. Where are these restoration opportunities located?
And I realized I didn't introduce myself when I first spoke, but hi, everyone. I'm Lexi Karen. I'm helping lead outreach for this study, and I'm also one of the environmental co-leads. So I'll be doing a lot of the environmental compliance and also the outreach. And so what you see on the screen right now is a draft study timeline for our feasibility study. So we kicked off the study officially at the end of 2024. So today is March. And so right now we're here speaking with you all to get some input on what restoration opportunities are important to you, where are they located. But just because we're here right now doesn't mean that this isn't going to be the last time you hear from us. And we really welcome you to send in any information that you may have from here on out. If something comes to you in a dream in 2 weeks, send it to us, So there's a few ways that you can send us some of your input, and that's by either emailing myself or Dylan Aubrey, who is the outreach lead for the Yurok tribe. Both of our emails are located on the flyer, but we also do have a general study email. It's the Klamath Basin gi@usace.army.mil. That's another way to send in any input and feedback from here on out. And so pretty much for the next 3 years, we will be working with the public, with nonprofits, with agencies to make sure that you are with us every step of the way. And aligned with the timeline that Corey went over, we're hoping for a draft report of our initial array of alternatives by the end of 2025. So that includes, our first, go ahead at bringing together all the input to come up with a recommended plan. And that's when we will formally come back to speak with you all to present those findings, those comparisons, those evaluations for a more formal public comment session. And then once we get all of that feedback, we'll go back to the drawing board and make sure that all of the input that we received is incorporated into a final report that is then sent to Congress, hopefully by the end of 2027, to then get the signature from the Chief of Engineers and get authorization and appropriation from Congress to go to our next phase, which is pre-construction, engineering, and design. And so just to clarify a little bit, between here and the end of 2025, we'll be working with agencies to get all of our environmental compliance. We'll be working with you all to make sure that your input is incorporated as much as possible into our initial array of alternatives. We'll be having a lot of internal meetings with our leadership to make sure that we're checking our own boxes. And yeah, we're hoping to have something for you all to review in a more formal matter at the end of 2025. But we really encourage you all to, reach out to us if something comes to mind, to, set meetings with the Yreka team or with us. because we really want to make sure that your voices are incorporated as much as possible. And that is all we had. So thank you so much. And I think we could end the recording.
I have one thing I wanted to add. So I just want to make it clear that, we're not starting from zero. We're not showing up here, not having done any homework and saying, what do you guys think? These folks have been really busy reviewing all the restoration plans, projects, studies, things like that they could find right now. They've been working with us on that. So we've been trying to help that. So the idea here is that we're not trying to be duplicative. We're not starting from ground zero here. We know that people have been really busy doing a lot of things. People have some big ideas. I know on the Scott River Watershed Council in Quartz Valley, worked on the restoration action plan for the Scott River. And so we're aware we have the IFRP that we've been doing and all that. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that. That said, we do want to hear what people think and what they hear. The other thing I wanted to say is that, the goal of this project is for ecosystem restoration, but our interest, the tribe's interest, is that helps stabilize communities itself, like rural communities, agricultural communities, ecosystem restoration. We believe they all go hand in hand. And so that's one of the things we've been working on. And I know, I'm looking at Blair, we have some potential partners in here. And the final thing I wanted to say is that we outlined a number of different ways. There's like an email, GI email to all that. But I want to make it clear to people that if you want to talk more, like if you want to sit at your kitchen table and we visit, talk more about it, we're willing to work with the people and do more consultation, intertribal consultation, Quartz Valley, Watershed Council, we're going to have a special meeting with them. So we're willing to tailor input any way people want, whatever they're comfortable with. So that's just some things. I think I was supposed to say this stuff in my intro and I didn't do it right. Sorry about that. So that's about it. I just want to make things clear.
Yeah, we have been, we did meet with, NOAA, Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, and so on. Earlier in January, they gave us a lot of reports to get started on, but we kicked off at the end of October, and ever since then, we've just been reading and making sure that we're looking at the right documents. But because this is such a large basin and there's been so much great work done, we just want to make sure that all of our bases are covered and we're considering everything. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Like, this data has already been collected. If these, plans have already been, sketched out in a way. Because another thing that I'm not sure if we mentioned, but the feasibility study, those 3 years, we're going to get to a 20 to 35% design. So we're not going to get all the way there. That's what the pre-construction and engineering design phases after we do the study. So we're getting a little bit of the way there. So that just goes back to what Mike talked about, and that we won't have a project footprint per se for, a couple more years. Open up to questions. Yes.
I'm wondering if your goal is recovery flows for salmonids.
And we have to repeat the question for the folks online.
Yes.
So the question was, is the goal recovery flows for salmonids? And I guess the answer is no. We can't tell the water managers how to release their flows. We don't have the legal authority to do that. We're more focused on the structure of the river channel. That's our primary focus.